What about kidney stones? Is that similar or is that different?
When I used to do newsletters for the typewriter, I found 30 different ways to get kidney disease. But the great book formed into 3 different ways. 1, you become too acidic and you make a uric acid kidney stone. 2, you become too alkaline and you make a calcium phosphate kidney stone. They're both about equal. And there's a third one, struvite. Struvite is from inflammation. There are a lot of people with alkaline inflammations that cause it. So you're likely to get a kidney stone after you get surgery, after you have an accident, after you're in shock over.
Aloha and welcome to another show, guys. Today, our special guest is someone who truly brings a unique and thought-provoking perspective to the world of health and nutrition. He's not only a seasoned expert, but also a trailblazer in holistic wellness with a deep understanding of the body's natural rhythms and how they interact with the foods we eat. Meet Atom Bergstrom. He's a renowned author, researcher, and the advocate for solar nutrition. His work challenges conventional thinking and offers a whole new way to approach health by focusing not on just what we eat, but when we eat it. Atom's philosophy of aligning meals with the sun cycle is rooted in ancient wisdom and is backed by years of careful observation and study. Imagine tapping into the natural energy cycles of your body to enhance digestion, minimize stress, and promote longevity. Well, that's exactly what Atom teaches through his pioneering work on solar nutrition, offering a pathway to better health by syncing our eating habits with nature's clock. Today, we'll dive into Atom's latest insights, uncover the hidden truths about sugar, and explore the power of timing in nutrition and so much more. If you're enjoying the show, guys, please don't forget to follow, subscribe, and leave a positive review. It really helps us to grow and continue bringing you fascinating guests like Atom. Now, without further ado, let's welcome Atom to the show. The views and opinions expressed by guests on the show do not necessarily reflect the views and the beliefs of the host or the show. The content shared is for entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as professional advice. Listener discretion is advised as topics may include sensitive and
Aloha, Atom, and welcome back to
Aloha.
the show.
Yes.
It's always a pleasure to have you with us, especially because you bring such a unique and thought-provoking perspective on health and wellness. Today, I'd like to dive into your fascinating book that I just read, Sugar, The
You
Good,
bet.
the Bad, and the Valid. And maybe we can explore some of the key ideas that you presented about sugar and metabolism and the role in our health.
It's especially poignant because my father died of diabetes at 54.
Oh my.
And what they did is they basically put him on a keto diet, and keto acidosis kills. And so they basically killed him with a total fat and protein diet. He ate so much it took out his kidney, then he died of kidney failure.
Oh my goodness. And he was so young.
Yeah, now if he knew that, see, where does the sugar in the urine come from? It comes from the protein breaking down in your body. So way back in 1840 or something, a dentist reasoned, since the sugar is coming from protein breaking down, I'll figure the exact amount of protein that's being made into sugar and replace it. So he was keeping people alive before they were diabetic drugs, not curing them, but keeping them alive, because then it was a death sentence. And what he did was simply give them as much as 12 ounces of refined white sugar and 4 ounces of honey. And that formula worked for him. And he was considered a nut, but his patients lived.
Yeah, exactly.
Our medicine is strange now. People have been convicted for curing people because they said, yes, you cured them, but you went against the community standards. So you're guilty. And they put them in jail because they
That's
cured
awful.
someone out of the body.
That's awful.
It is.
You mentioned that sugar, contrary to popular belief, might actually prevent systematic issues like Candida overgrowth. Yeah, that goes against so much of the mainstream narrative. But can you explain how the sugar plays a protective role in the body?
Candida actually protects your eyes. It actually has a function. What doctors often miss is a yin and a yang. Anything has a good side and a bad side. Even cancer is good for mortuaries, right? For morticians and for cancer specialists. So if you go to the humorous side of it. But what happens, Candida, like any other creature on Earth, wants to survive. So if you cut off its sugar supply, what's it going to eat? It turns carnivore and starts eating human flesh because it can too turn protein into sugar. It's rougher on it, and it's rougher on us because now it starts eating our organs. Once it gets out of the gut, it goes any place it wants to. And systemic candida, which is very rare, because if you have it, you have heart disease because it eats the heart. And so it's much better to keep it in your bowel, have 3 bowel movements a day at least, and then there's no problem, even if you have candida. But when it becomes a carnivore, then you're the food instead of the gut. And sometimes it eats even things that you don't want in there. Another thing is, if you cut off the sugar, there are certain other organisms, bacteria and viruses, that eat candida. What are they going to eat? They can't keep the candida in control unless they have more food. So you're starving the good microbiome as well as the bad microbiome.
I guess the experts, they tell us to avoid sugar when dealing with Candida overgrowth.
Yep. The funny thing is, what medicine teaches us today is to avoid the natural things. That is bad. Salt is bad. Sugar is bad. But all these chemicals that have hypomarxtrosesquipedalianism is the name for long words. If they have a formula that's 2 pages long, must be good for you. But sugar, God, it's only got 3 elements in it. Protein only has 4 elements in it. Salt only has sodium and chloride in it. It must be bad because it's so simple. Nature doesn't know what it's doing for millions and billions of years, but we do because we have invented chemistry 200 years ago. So we know it all. It's really ridiculous.
Yeah. What are some of the signs that you do have a Candida overgrowth, or if it, I think you mentioned systematically. What are some of the signs of that, and how serious is that?
You know, the reason I knew it was bogus from the beginning, and I was in the health food business in East, it became the same. Before the Candida craze, it was hypoglycemia. And for Candida, they gave a test. They gave about 20 questions. This is how you're going to have it. I noticed they just hijacked the hypoglycemia tests. We're using the same thing. So even back then in the 80s, I realized it's the disease of the year, or every 2 or 3 years, they switch diseases. You hear about hypoglycemia. You don't hear about that barely any anymore. Now it's hyperglycemia. Then it was Candida. And after that, there were starch blockers and all that. And that turned out to swell your appendix into huge amounts. So they goofed on that. It all disappeared. It's a disease of the, probably they switch every 2 or 3 years, I'd say. And they use the same test because also the lab tests are inaccurate. I would say about 95% of the lab tests are totally inaccurate or measure the wrong things. And that's the truth of it. But people go and get tested. I don't even take quizzes. The tests you get in hospitals are made up. They're made up for chemicals, and they change the meaning of it. There was a test called the endoxyl test to see if you were toxic. They took it away and made it a specific enzyme test. Well, credit, though I don't like the zone diet, but there were some things that the author of that introduced that were good. One thing he said, why don't they bring back the endoxyl test for toxicity? It can tell if your kidney and your colon are toxic, if your tendency to get cancer. Why don't they bring it back? But no, they use it for specific things and not for a general toxicity test. And indeed, indoles and scatols are major causes of cancer inside the colon.
Wow.
Okay. There's two ways to deal with it, by the way. Tryptophan is what makes the indoles and scatols. Now, you take the indoles and scatols, and you can either have 3 bowel movements a day, and as a tryptophan, it doesn't have time enough to really form these chemicals and rotate them through your body. So you just poop it out. The other thing, if you're constipated, then it's a good idea to take the advice of doctors and cut down on your tryptophan, because it is a carcinogen, but it has a double role. It can be beneficial for certain things. It puts you to sleep, which I'm not into. I studied with a girl who didn't sleep and recommended not sleeping. Anyway, tryptophan, most of the free-form amino acids are GMO products. They're made in labs. It used to take them as much as a year to make some of those free-form amino acids. So they started advertising, oh, the peptide forms are better for you because they're cheaper. So the protein powders wouldn't have many of them in, or if they did, they lied about it because it just took too long. And besides, tryptophan did not cause all that. Remember the deaths in, I think it was in the 80s, they had deaths from tryptophan and you couldn't get it anymore? Well, it was actually a GMO variation they made that killed people, not the tryptophan itself. So you just can't keep track of all the lies that the medical profession has its own deep state, that they don't tell us things, and they know a lot of this. They know it kills people, and it's all about the stock market and Wall Street.
Wow. Are there specific types of sugar that are better than another?
Particularly the one that they say is the worst, fructose. And basically, fructose is a simple sugar in fruit. So basically, are they saying fruit causes cancer? I mean, when you think about it, it's outrageous. Now, here are some interesting facts. Diabetics, they used to recommend Tupelo honey for them. Why? Because it didn't crystallize. Why? Because there was fructose. It had such a high fructose content that diabetics could eat it. So what happened to that information? The diabetics could eat fructose with no side effects. Why were dates high in fructose? Why were they recommended for diabetes back in the day? And still are. You can go on the internet and find out dates, Borhe dates, whatever kind of dates, Medjool actually work for it. Why would you go to the health food store and those big bins, those buckets where you take things out by the pound yourself? They were full of fructose. Why did they sell fructose? And why is fructose necessary for your liver health? And why can a sperm use it for its rocket fuel? It can't go anywhere without fructose. So you ban that, you get lower birth rates, you get lower sperm counts, you get liver disease, because sugar will actually protect you against both alcoholic fatty disease and non-alcoholic fatty disease, which is actually omega-3. In fact, omega is one of the major causes of diabetes, not sugar.
That's interesting. So fructose, is that what's in juice and soda, things like that?
Well, you have to be careful because high fructose corn syrup is not the same and often has starch in it, according to Ray Peat. Now, he says as much as 34% starch. I wonder about that. Warren Buffett claims he gets 25% of his calories from high fructose corn syrup and Coca-Cola. Hugh Hefner drank 30 or more bottles of Pepsi. One was a Pepsi guy, the other guy was a Coca-Cola guy. And look at all the junk food that Charlie Munger ate, and he lived to 99. So sometimes your attitude is more important than health. However, we eat everything we can organic, and we eat few processed foods. The only processed foods really are sugar. We get white refined sugar, and we get salt that has no iodine or minerals or Himalayan whatever in it, or ocean salt. It's just plain sodium and chloride, no additives. And ironically, we get that from one of the big industrial companies in the Midwest. People don't like, and we don't do any kind of business with them on anything else. But ironically, they make the best non-GMO salt because they use non-GMO salt and put glyphosate in it. Because instead of burning the cane fields, they put glyphosate. This is in Hawaii. In fact, they do it. But if it's refined, the glyphosate is taken out too. We're getting you have nothing 100% pure, but we're getting 99.99% pure because they take the glyphosate out in the refining process. So the more refined the sugar is, the less glyphosate. Now, if you get any kind of brown sugar or real sugar, you're getting glyphosate. Even if it says non-GMO, it better say organic. And even then you have to be careful because a lot of organic growers don't know that. So anyway, it's a strange world.
It is. Well, what makes the sugar brown sugar if it's not natural? It's like sticky, Is it molasses on there?
Here's the funny thing. Brown sugar is not allowed in the United States. When you tell people that, they go, what? Adamo Lay, Swami Nitty Gritty, used to go out to the sugar refinery in Sugar Land, Texas. And they would say, he would say, I want brown sugar for my cattle. Then he could get the product. But otherwise, what is sold as brown sugar is usually they take and refine it into white sugar, and then they spray it with caramel, which is burnt sugar. So you get a brown sugar. I'm eating raw sugar. No, you're not. The only raw sugar, which was made through animal bones and caused viruses, was the blonde sugar that they sold and gave you at Starbucks. So I brought my own sugar to Starbucks. Actually, they would have white, but you had to ask for it because they didn't have it on the table. And sometimes I'd get honey, too.
So honey is good for you.
Honey is good for you. Now, you can be allergic to honey. Capping honey is the best. You have less allergies in it. It's a particular type of honey. I used to deal with beekeepers and knew, what was his name? George Bigger. I believe he lived into his hundreds. And he was the expert on honey in the entire world. If you saw Ripley's Believe It or Not or That's Incredible, he was the guy with the beard of bees. He would go in and just have a beard of bees. When he would come into the health food store, they have these honey in metal containers that are like, God, I don't know how heavy they are. He would walk in with two of them like they were nothing. I had to use both hands and go across the floor like this to get the honey to unload it and put it in buckets and things. But Bickers was amazing. He was an expert on honey. He was an expert on bee pollen. He was an expert on bees. And he was used by the military on honey information. And he lived and thrived in Ojai, California, right up the street from us. So.
I know bee pollen is supposed to be good for you.
It's a good source of protein.
Is it? Protein. I know it gives you kind of an energy too.
Vitamin C and things. And by the way, here's something really amazing. Did you know that when you take nutrients like protein, it takes your energy from you? No. It robs you. And think about it. If you give a plant fertilizer, it actually robs energy. It gets its energy from the sun and sugar. That's why you want nutrients It's on the south side of the tree, double the nutrients on the south side of the tree. Taste can almost be the same, though it might be there's more water in the north side of the tree. But here's what happens. How come when you fast, you don't need to sleep? I've done fasting. I've done semi-fasting. And when I was at Sufi camp for over a month, 6 weeks, we were given a very restricted diet. Almost nothing but vegetables out of the garden. And we either boiled them into soup or ate them as a salad. Your choice all day. And almost nothing for breakfast except maybe a piece of fruit or a couple of dates. And we had energy where I would get 3 hours of sleep and have no problem with it. Now, you lose mass. What protein is mass. And you obviously need to have something there. If you're all energy, you lose all your body. But protein does not give you energy. When people take a protein drink, they would have to go through, what is it called, gluconeogenesis or whatever the name is for it, where they have to break it down. We run on sugar, and then when we go anaerobic, we run on fat. If we run a long way fast, we switch to fat because we run out of oxygen for the glucose. But protein, it's a zero-sum game. You break down protein into sugar, and you gain as much energy as you lose by running off of protein. And of course, what they call ketogenesis is involved in starvation. It's actually not a form of burning. It's not even fat burning. It's ketone burning out of the protein. So again, the whole world is mixed up on all these things.
I know. I'm just reading a book called China Study. I don't know if you've heard that before.
I have.
Yeah.
I've read
and
it.
have you? And it's very interesting. He was talking about the proteins and what they actually found where it promoted cancer if you ate a lot of protein. I think he said if you ate 5% protein or less, then it would keep the cancer at bay. But if you ate more than that, that's when it starts to become a problem.
It depends on the protein, and I found a lot of flaws in that book, but there is an interesting thing. Cancer's favorite food is glutathione.
What's that?
It is actually an amino acid, and it's supposed to cure cancer. Now, I put that on Facebook, and you can imagine the hornet's nest stirred up. But even the Oswald Spengler people know that glutathione is cancer's favorite food. They admit it. It's been done in longevity studies, Aubrey de Grey, etc. They know glutathione is cancer's favorite food. Why? That's what they don't know. It's because cancer is an isoparasite. It basically, imagine you have a union crew in your body that's handling the plumbing and building and everything to keep the body in maintenance. Well, what happens is there's no more work to be done. So guess what? We'll build our own structures. That's what an isoparasite is. So basically, it's you. When you try to kill it, you have to kill your own cells. So the real trick is to out-eat cancer and figure out how to get food in you and starve it to death. Because eventually, if you can prevent wasting syndrome or cachexia, then the cancer loses. But people don't do that. They try to kill it, and basically they're killing themselves. That's what happens with chemo, with radiation. You're killing yourself as well. If your hair falls out, all kinds of things happen. It's really serious. And actually, the only times chemo does work is counter shock. This was found out by William Coley years ago. He met a man, or he heard of a man that had been dying of cancer in the hospital. Well, the man got very sick and was supposed to die of another disease. He survived the other disease, and it ate up his cancer completely. And he was discharged from the hospital perfectly cancer-free. So Coley became interested, and he tracked this guy down 8 years later. He was still alive, had no cancer. So you can actually, chemo works like an auto accident. People have been cured by killer bees, by auto accidents, by anything by counter shock. It's very risky because you risk being killed by the other. Coley devised a toxin that took you to the edge, but not over the edge. Because first he tried giving them diseases, and half of them died. Half of them were cancer-free. But he finally worked that out. But they wanted radiation because there's money in machines. We don't want what's called convivial tools. A convivial tool that you and I can use. We don't have to go to a computer expert or someone who builds a huge machine for thousands and thousands of dollars. We could do it ourselves. Well, they didn't want you giving your person a cold maybe to cure a cancer. They wanted you to go in front of $1 million machine and get irradiated or get chemotherapy for multiple sessions where your hair falls out and you almost die. It's the same thing as getting an auto accident, getting stung by killer bees, getting a type of disease that, like cholera, that you survive, bubonic plague, which is rather rare, that you can't survive it, and those people can get cancer-free. So it's all a game, and they know it. That's the funny thing. They're actually pathetic things.
Yeah. Wow. You also mentioned in your book about Chapman reflex point.
Yes.
And how you gave the story about the lady who had her blood work done and she was absolutely fine. She went back a month later and she broke her ribs, I think it was. And then now she had full-blown diabetes. And you'd mentioned that that rib is attached to some meridian that affects the diabetes, something like that.
Yeah, the Chapman reflexes have been adapted for Touch for Health and applied kinesiology as the neurolymphatic reflexes. Same thing. Well, anyway, she came into the health food store and said, "Could you explain this to me, please? I've never seen her before." And she said the same thing you said. She was perfectly healthy, and she broke a rib. And the doctor said, "Let's do the test again." Well, we just did it a month ago. Now let's do it again. It's on your insurance anyway, free. "You have severe diabetes." "How could that be?" And I said, "Easy. You had to have broken the fourth or fifth rib on your left side." And her eyes got about that big, and she said, "Are you psychic?" I said, "No. I didn't even know it was called the Chapman reflexes, and I called it the neurolymphatic reflexes before I started studying osteopathy. And anyway, now I could have gone further since it was on the left side. It was a male. But she didn't ask me that. It was none of my business, and she wasn't a client of mine. So I never saw her again. So I told her what to do for it, which is yawn and stretch. And there are things to do for diabetes. Again, at that time, I didn't know that sugar would be a cure for diabetes, though.
Right.
And again, there's type 1 diabetes and there's type 2. What the sugar did was cure type 1, which is supposed to be incurable. You have it for life. Well, what the doctor did back in the day was you had it for life, but all you had to do was eat sugar and keep alive. Pretty much what they do today with type 1 diabetes. Type 2 actually isn't even really diabetes. It's caused by omega-3s and a lifestyle. And I know probably a dozen people who got over it completely, even one with severe diabetes that got over it, severe type 2 diabetes. One is called adult onset, they used to call it. They probably changed the terms by now. And the other was juvenile diabetes, which was type 1 diabetes.
I think today everyone's taking the Ozempic, and not only diabetic people, but just for weight loss.
You know, the best weight loss is put tape over your mouth. Do you see any fat people in a concentration camp? No. Do you see any primitive people who are out there getting exercise and just eating food? No. Now, there's different hormonal types, so people expand greater or lesser. But still, it boils down to simply having 3 bowel movements a day and eat good food. If you, for instance, if you're really overweight, if you eat raw food, raw food usually doesn't provide as much energy as cooked food does, but most of it doesn't digest. And so you have to eat a lot. And a lot of people don't even like raw food. So even it makes them eat less. I found when people said, but I only eat this minimum amount, that's a lie. If you really track them and follow them and watch what they eat, they always add a little snack here and a little this here and a little that there. And solar nutrition, by the way, where you efficiently use it, I've seen people lose 10 pounds in 10 days, just like that. Now, some people have traumas. It's called Big Mama syndrome, where the child is put in charge of the other kid and has to get authority. You get big and puffy. How many corporate guys are skinny like me? They're all bloated like this because they throw their weight around. You don't find skinny guys as CEOs. Even thin ones who start like Bill Gates, they bloat up and look like pregnant people because
How
they
tall
throw
are
their
you?
weight around.
How tall are you, Adam? You look tall.
I was in high school. I played on my height, which was 6'1¾" the exact height of Elvis Presley
Oh,
at the time.
and how heavy are you? I mean, did you keep the same weight throughout your lifetime, pretty
Yeah,
much?
no matter what I ate.
Ah.
Now get this. I used to eat on solar. A typical dinner would be go into House of Pies and order 3 eggs in an omelet with hash browns and other things with it, and then order a second round of 3 eggs and hash browns, and then order a third round of hash browns, and then have 3 pieces of sweet potato pie, and I couldn't gain anything.
Some people are like that. Why do you think your metabolism was so good?
Well, one thing could be poor digestion, perhaps, and also we do have a regulating part in our body. If you're not in shock, it works fine. You don't need all these specific hormones to learn all about to do it and take it or take drugs to do it. But when you eat on time and have little traumas, which at that point, I really didn't have that many traumas. My body worked fine. It still does. The only way I gain weight, if I go in the gym and put on muscle, then I gain weight. But unlike most people, if I sit around like a couch potato, I lose weight. And a lot of that is solar, because many people blame aging for gaining weight. They're thin and suddenly in their 30s or 40s. But if you eat solar, work on your traumas, yawn and stretch, because a lot of weight is gaseous pressure, and it's similar to bloat and edema, even a type of edema, you don't gain weight. And that's one reason solar has kept me slim and skinny right now, because I'm not working out at the gym. If I was working out at the gym, I would get big again. I studied bodybuilding with Ed Brock and with Don Peters and professional bodybuilders you can find on the internet that are gone today. I think Ed Brock is gone now too. But anyway, I put on weight by working out at the gym. And that's mass again. You're not gaining energy at the gym, you're gaining mass. And then you go sleep extra or rest extra to get more carbon dioxide to rebuild the mass so you can convert it back to energy. It's mass versus energy. And even a lot of bodybuilders don't understand that. Skinny guy like me used to advise professional bodybuilders. They used to come to me for advice on free-form amino acids and protein and things like that. Both up in Portland, where I managed to help the store, and also right here in Carpinteria, California, down the road.
That's funny. Are there any exercise or techniques that can stimulate or protect these reflex points?
Yes. One of the things I did, and they looked at me askance in the gym, is if you look at Touch for Health and other applied kinesiology books, there are muscles tied in with the lungs and muscles tied in with the intestines, etc., kidneys, whatsoever. So I decided to do my workout according to organs. And so I would do some deltoid and rotator cuff exercises to start with, and they look really weird in the gym. And then I would do large intestine ones for the fascia lata, And then I would do ones for the spleen and pancreas and the triceps and the latissimus dorsi and etc. And the heart for the subscapularis, on and on. So people would wonder, what the heck is he doing? What kind of exercises are those? They look very strange. So I figured if I'm going to learn applied kinesiology or touch for health or biokinesiology, I'm going to learn it and see what the muscle does so I can advise how to do the muscle. So I did make my workout time appropriate too, and tended to work out at times when you would gain weight. One time a day you're going to gain muscle mass, and another time a day you're going to gain what they call a cut or a burn or a, what do they call it? Basically you cut away fat. It's very popular to see. You want to see the Christmas tree in the back, and you want to see all the abs and everything like that. That's popular. It wasn't that popular back in bodybuilding in the 60s when I knew Don Peters. But now it's become more and more like you have to be cut and all that. Well, if you want to be cut, you work out at spleen pancreas time when you're likely to lose more fat. If your fat burns more. And if you want to gain mass, you do it at bladder time between 3 to 5 in the afternoon. And if you want to gain strength, which is different from gaining body mass, you do it at kidney time when it's been proven that your grip is stronger and that your muscles work stronger. So if a person is strength lifting, like for powerlifting, he wants to go and do it at, actually powerlifting is the wrong term for it, but they call it that. You do the strength training at kidney time. If you want to get big, you go to bladder time, and if you want to get cut, you go to spleen pancreas time, and you adjust that by whether you drink cold liquids, hot liquids, and other ways, and use sugar, not sugar, etc. So there's all kinds of ways with circadian timing and common sense that make you gain faster than others. My proudest day in the gym is when someone came up to me and said, "Are you on steroids? How are you gaining that mass?" I walked out like, but that was the biggest I got at that point, because after that, I found a girlfriend and didn't have time for the gym anymore. And when we broke up, I went back to the gym and gained my mass back that I'd lost.
You also recommended exercises for building that cobra back to prevent diabetes.
Yeah, which exercise?
For your back.
Oh,
to get that V back, that cobra back that you were talking about. And
yes.
I guess, why is that?
The kidneys. The kidneys also affect the heart. They're reflexes to the heart. You know the so-called heart marking in the ear? You've probably heard about it. If you look at the ear carefully, it's the kidneys. It's a kidney marking, which is a shunt from the heart to take pressure off the heart. People with heart disease often die at kidney time between 5 to 7. Heart time is 11 to 1. A true heart attack almost invariably happens is the businessman's heart attack at high noon or so. It doesn't happen at 3 in the morning. That's a lung attack. It doesn't happen at 8 in the morning. That's a stomach attack. It doesn't happen at midnight. That's a gallbladder attack. And it doesn't happen at 8 at night. That is a pericardium attack, which is related. Interesting that acupuncture has 2 hearts, a pericardium and a heart meridian. It's a very important organ.
That's interesting. My stepfather passed away at 11:45 a.m.
That's heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. That's
I think
heart.
he started, I guess, with the chest pain, and I think he had a heart attack. It was maybe at 9 a.m., something like that. They took him to the hospital, and then I think he had another little heart attack, and then the big one just before they were going to take him in surgery, and that was at 11:45 a.m.
Yeah, it's a shame, but many people don't know that you can actually stop a heart attack by screaming and yelling. But because we're so inhibited, do you know that people, rather than get the Heimlich maneuver, when they start choking on food, they go in the restroom by themselves. So no one can come in and they can't go over a chair. or they can't have someone come up behind them that knows the Heimlich maneuver. And it's the same with a heart attack. A friend got rid of his. He had a heart attack at 28, and he pounded his chest on the way down to the floor, straightened up his diet, never saw a doctor. I talked to him about 3 years ago. He was still alive and had some kidney problems, interesting enough, but he was smart enough to take barley soup for it at lunch every day. Anyway, I've had 2 suspicious pre-heart attacks where your left arm starts to get numb and it goes down. In classic acupuncture, your pinky is the heart meridian, and this is your thyroid. They're made out of the same tissue. That's why these fingers don't quite operate separately. They have nerves in common, because it's the only one where the chest for the Chapman reflexes is the same for the thyroid as the heart. That's no accident. They are joined together. Now, if you thyroid is working properly, you're unlikely to have a heart attack. And that's tied in with the lungs. So if you're yawning and stretching properly, and screaming helps. Anyway, both times when I realized I had it, I was alone. So I was driving alone across the desert, and the warning light came out in the middle of nowhere with all of my belongings in an open pickup truck. And so I thought, if I break down here, I have to leave my possessions in an open truck 30 miles away from civilization. Is that going to be here? Well, the possessions were more important to me. So what I did is I started screaming and yelling and beating my chest while I'm driving. And I just screamed out, and I felt it all back down. I said, okay. And then I took a chance. I drove all the way to Houston from Arizona with that warning light on. And I drove around with it, and nothing happened. And then I woke up one morning and I said, this is a trick that Swami Nitty Gritty put me through. It was all a game. And I went out and the warning light was not on. So I returned the pickup truck to the man who I was delivering it to, and there was no warning light on.
That's too funny.
Life is strange.
Mm-hmm. Is there any scientific evidence linking muscle development with blood sugar control or sugar?
Yes. Sugar will actually build muscle because it provides the energy to do the workout. So the more sugar you have, and the common thing is if you take sugar, it messes up your workout because you're burning pine needles. I've done coffee and sugar and had tremendous workouts that I couldn't have before. And also, coffee affects hormones in such a way that one time I went to the gym and I didn't have coffee for breakfast. I started to do a bench press. And not only was I exceedingly weak, but my wrists hurt. Now, a wrist are a hormone and have a lot to do with thyroid, by the way. Your hormones are in your wrist, your neck, your ankles, and your waist. And so realizing that, I went out of the gym, went about 2 blocks away, got some coffee with lots of sugar, went back to the gym. I could press double, and my wrist problem was solved. Before, the wrists were limiting. That was my limiting factor for the lift. So anytime you have a wrist problem, you have a hormone problem. Or an ankle problem usually follows, and you'll find a stiffness in the neck, and you will find a waist problem. So we were taught by Swami Nitty Gritty when we worked on someone to activate those before we worked on anybody, so we didn't catch their disease paranormally. Because many people who concentrate on a particular disease, like it's well known that kidney doctors die of kidney disease. Heart surgeons die of heart diseases. Whatever you get, flu, cancer, whatever, they die of the very diseases because they get attached to them by seeing them over and over and not having an antidote to get out of that. So there are many techniques that protect you. And when I used to certify people for reflexology, I would spend at least 1 hour telling people how to avoid that kind of feedback. Because when it happened to me, it freaked me out. I went over to a buddy who had not been, he had had a backache that he'd been to medical doctors, he'd been to chiropractors, nobody could fix it. I fixed it. And he cried. He said, "Oh, thank you, the pain is gone." I went over to a friend's, and as I sat there, my back went out, exactly where his did, watching TV. So I went to Swami Nitty Gritty, and he told me what happened. You got a transfer of that. Do you know, I was afraid to work on anybody for 6 months. I went to his school and I was afraid to work on anybody because of that, until I learned techniques to protect myself. And I figured at that point, I had a Dharma to always fix me if I couldn't take care of it. So then when I learned these techniques, I wasn't afraid of it anymore. But I took the precaution that I told people to do before it. Because when my back problem in Houston to the hour got better, my friends went out again.
Wow. Would that be something like a sympathetic kind of?
That's exactly what it is. Instead of empathy, in sympathy, the person's throwing up over the railing from seasickness, you throw up with them. That doesn't help. But if you empathize, okay, never, Japan put it, never limp before a crippled man. It doesn't do them any good at all. It doesn't give them any inspiration, and then everybody would be crippled. But in our civilization, we tend to do that, unfortunately, and we pay the price for it. We get diseases from exactly what you say, sympathy.
Hey Ohana, I hope you're loving this conversation as much as I am. I just wanted to pause for a quick moment to ask for your support. If you're enjoying what you're hearing and feel like we've earned it, we'd be so grateful if you could leave us a rating or review. Your honest feedback really helps us grow and reach more people who love exploring these fascinating topics. And if you think this episode would resonate with someone you know, don't forget to share it with them. Mahalo nui loa for being part of our journey. Now, back to the show.
Wow. So how do you protect yourself with that?
One of the things you do is after you work on somebody, if you go to a massage therapist, what do they do after they massage you with deep massage, which puts you into shock? They bring you out by lightly stimulating you with a light massage. Well, the same thing happens to you by identifying with them, by concentrating on them. So you go out and you put cold water on your wrist and wash your hands in cold water. Cold breaks the heat. We talk about even with sex. I'm in heat for her. She's a cold witch, whatever. You see how they do that? It works for social connections too. You break connections with coldness and you connect more with heat. So what you want to do is get the cold. I had a client that had a serious disease in New York. I ran down 3 flights of stairs and washed my ankle, my wrists and my hands in snow. So those type of precautions happen. Also, I learned to do another technique, which is after you work on somebody, do this. And pretend that there's water on your hands and lick it off. And I used to do it because it looked cool. But then when I got that backache, I realized I'm doing it. And after that, I didn't have any problem. Cold water, this, and there's other techniques to not get connected. One thing is when you work on a person in massage and touch their flesh, the karma is transferred through the oil content from fingertip to hands. So Swami Nitty Gritty said, work on people's bare body as little as possible. So he always used like a TENS unit, and I, doing mind hacking, or the cornerstone technique, I used, people say, should I take off my socks? No, not necessary. Take off your shoes, yeah. But since I'm looking for gross body movements, it's not necessary. And why do additional touching when you don't have to? Now, touching when you have a partner, no problem. You share your karma, right? You don't care, or your family or stuff. But other people out there, you don't know what kind of people they really are and what deep secrets they have. So mind hacking can find them a lot of times. Things you don't want to know, maybe even. But it's just not a good idea to be touching everybody in the universe like that. And of course, massage therapists, why are massage therapists specifically, they get their hands go numb? It's a common problem. And it's not physiological. It's an exchange of energy that happens. So it's a mental disease, a psychosomatic disease, and an energetic exchange.
That's interesting. I know a lot of times when I guess when you have bad energy or you're around with people that are negative energy, it's a good thing to get a shower. I didn't know about the hot or the cold, but now I know. Cool shower to wash that off. And I forget what else you said. Oh, brushing off, like you were doing this, same as like brushing off their energy to get off of you and go back to them, because you don't want to hold on to their energy, whatever that could be, whether it's a
Exactly.
sick energy or a negative energy, whatever the case is.
So sometimes when I could, say someone came over to my place to be worked on, I'd go in the shower. Now I'd start with a hot shower, but I'd always finish off with an ice cold shower. And it's an amazing thing, and you can try this, and you may have. If you take a cold shower, you can go out in the cold air, and you're really hot for a while. So the cold actually works like a homeopathic, which is really a thief to catch a thief. You use cold to resist the cold. And it always amazed me. Now, if you go in and do nothing but a cold shower, it actually causes you to go on shock, and then it doesn't work. But if you start off with heat and then go with cold. In high school, I read in the Reader's Digest that fighter pilots would increase their eyesight by putting cold water on their hips. After that, it was cold showers after every hot shower since 17 years old. I still do it today.
Wow. You mentioned also about lactic acid buildup and how that can contribute to diseases.
That gets blamed for sugar. When sugar burns incompletely, because of omega-3 fatty acids, because of estrogen, because of nitric oxide, because of serotonin, you get incomplete burning of sugar. That does cause cancer. But that's going to happen no matter how much sugar you have in your body, because you're going to make that amount of sugar from fat, or you're going to make it from protein, whatever. You have to burn on either sugar or fat. And so you're going to make it by doing that. So yes, that's true.
Is the lactic acid also when you work out and you get that tightening of the muscle and it hurts the next day? Is that the same thing?
You know what? This is a very interesting subject, because bodybuilders claim that's wrong information now. They have the real deal. It's micro tears in the muscle. Well, I have a question about that. When I did my first Sufi workshop with Adnan Sarhan, we went with just a couple of dates for lunch and dinner from 10 in the morning till 1 in the morning. How many hours is that? 13 hours? We went straight, and it was the most vigorous exercise. When I woke up in the morning, I couldn't move. I was just so bound up. And at that point, I believed in lactic acid, so I realized it was. But I went back for a Sunday for this final day of the workshop, which went from 10 in the morning till 6 or 7. And I thought, surely he's going to take it easy on us today because we're wrecks. Well, he didn't. He didn't take it easy on us. So I started out where I could barely move. But by the end of the day, I was free and loose and completely free. Now, if it's micro tears, did I magically make them go away? When the bodybuilders say when you get micro tears, to prevent them, take a couple of days off and rest, cross-train, do something different. But here, I didn't do that, and yet the stiffness was gone and never came back. How could that be a muscle tear unless it was a miracle healing from St. Teresa or something? So anyway, I have a big problem with them So I believe it's lactic acid. I was taught by Swami Nitty Gritty that it was lactic acid. And I was also taught that regular dairy products does it. Cream does not, butter does not, ghee does not. There are certain products that do. Ray Peat believed that milk was okay, but I've seen the research, but that has too much lactic acid. You won't find it in cream or butter, especially in ghee or whole cream. You'll find less than half and half. And so I only drink whole cream or eat maybe some cheddar cheese once in a while or use butter. I don't even go to ghee because butter has mostly fat and very little of anything else.
Yeah, I think you talked about yogurt and sauerkraut, and I think that I guess other health experts say they're good for you, right? And maybe they're not so good for you.
You know, a little bit won't hurt you. And
Sure.
sauerkraut can be a remedy. Back in the days when I drank stupidly, and I mean really drank, one time I couldn't put anything in my stomach. And somebody told me, get some sauerkraut juice. So I got some canned sauerkraut juice, and it's the first thing I could put in my stomach, even though canned sauerkraut. I didn't know any better back then. Obviously, I was drinking. I must not have known much. So, but I noticed it cured my stomach. And then I learned that sauerkraut juice can work for ulcers too, particularly sauerkraut juice or sauerkraut with cayenne. It's a cure for ulcers. So everything has a downside and a upside. Even omega-3 oils, which cause yellow fat disease, can sometimes slow down cancer development. But there's better ways to do it because you're aging yourself. It uses aging to counteract cancer. But sometimes for therapy, if you have nothing else, it's good to know your options to walk what's called the razor's edge, right down the middle of yin and yang.
Yeah. Are there any fermented foods that don't contribute to lactic acid buildup?
You know, again, a little sauerkraut or dill pickles or once in a while, it's no big deal. It's when people say, I'm going to go on a fermented food diet. That's erroneous. Fermented food used to help because instead of refrigeration, you didn't have it. Fermentation preserved it. So you could make things last a long time. And it was practical because, again, you're working the razor's edge. Damned if you do, damned if you don't to the side. So you better find some kind of middle way to get through it. And in life, we're often have that middle way. That's why even an occasional salmon isn't going to hurt anybody, even though I'm so down on DHA and EPA and omega-3 fatty acids, etc. But it's when you do it constantly, like when I used tuna every day, had tuna, I got yellow fat disease. The Japanese only eat fish 3 or 4 times a day. I outdid the Japanese. And the Japanese, by the way, can get yellow fat disease too. But they're smart enough to eat salt and other foods to balance it out as well. A lot of high salt diet. Salt can actually help counter yellow fat disease.
Yeah, I think the Koreans are they have the highest stomach cancer in the world or nation because they eat a lot of kimchi, which is fermented.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
I think they go overboard. Like
they
you
can
say.
go overboard with it, and then it can actually lead to cancer. You know,
Sure.
nothing is a true carcinogen. It's like a world of co-carcinogens. When you mix one thing with another and you do it constantly, eventually the body has a defense where a little toxin can actually help you. Like, it's well known. It's called hormesis now, which is a spin-off on homeopathy, that the opposite can often stimulate it. They get hens to lay more eggs by giving them a little mercury. They also use it in vaccines and things like that. And actually, it does work. But if you get too much and you go over the side, then you have a problem. Anytime you're using extreme levels of homeopathy, which has changed its definition. Before it was a thief to catch a thief. What you call radiation therapy is a form of homeopathy. It's a thief to catch a thief. Why would poison in your body rebound your body by getting it? It's better to do a smaller amount of homeopathy, like take a little of a toxin, and then it insures you against it. If you ate a totally pure diet, it's called the boy in the bubble. Remember that the boy who couldn't come out of the bubble because everything would toxify him. I've met people that couldn't go out of their house. What is that syndrome called where you cannot come out of your house because everything's toxic to you? You're allergic and everything out there agrees with you, disagrees with you. People used to move to west of Austin, up in Kerrville and that area, because it was supposed to be the least toxic area in the U.S. There was nothing really in the air that got there at that time. Now Austin is so big it might have changed. But at that point, Kerrville and those areas, actually it wasn't Kerrville, it's west of Austin, up in the mountains there, the hills country. You were protected from it. But why? There are ways to make yourself resistant to it. And often things get blamed, like peanut allergies. Kill people, right? How come the peanut was grown first in Africans? How come the Africans don't have peanut allergies? How come the Chinese don't have peanut allergies at all, but only in the West? It's obviously in the processing. Some people say the Chinese tend to boil their peanuts rather than process it like we do. But God knows what goes on in the industrial plants where they add who knows what to the mix and cause peanut allergies. Now we have peanut allergies and cashew allergies and all kinds of allergies that really didn't exist at one time in some civilization, but our chemists have managed to give us all these allergies.
I believe you mentioned something about sugar. Can it detox our body with heavy metals?
It can. Yes, it can. Very strangely. If you have heavy metals, the sugar helps you burn it more. And of course, I've used it for abscesses. That's my first line of defense. If I start to get a toothache or an abscess, I start taking sugar. Sometimes I can take 1 teaspoon, boom, just like that. Other times, I take half a mayonnaise jar. I have all these empty mayonnaise jars from when I used to eat tuna and mayo. So there's a good side of eating tuna, right? I have all these jars. But anyway, I will take half a jar, which people will say, holy cow, that's like 3 or 4 ounces of sugar. And it takes it. Now, if it doesn't work then I go to aloe vera. Vibrant Gal is Dr. Aloe, by the way. She really is a fan of aloe, and it works. Or then I go to thieves oil and some other things as well, sometimes garlic, whatever. Usually the aloe is enough to counter it. I just keep it in my mouth constantly, and I oil pull. People diss that oil pull, but I do it for a different reason, though. They spit it out. I swallow the toxins because it's homeopathic. My body then, by putting it through, it's like drinking your urine. Instead of drinking your urine, all you have to do is swallow your toxins, your saliva, and do the same effect.
Yeah, that's... Yep.
I'm not fond of the taste of urine. I've done it before, but it's unnecessary. I used to have a girlfriend that drank urine 3 times a day.
I hope she filtered it or something. Did she?
No, she didn't. And she didn't know. See, the true urine therapy is to get midstream in the morning only. That's what it's supposed to be. It's evolved into everything. There's even people who drink other people's urine and animal urine to get well. So just not my cup of tea.
No, absolutely not. Is acidic better for your body or being alkaline better?
Being both acidic in the morning and alkaline at night is ideal, depending. Now, if you're a night worker, it kind of can change around. Because basically, when you sleep, you load up with carbon dioxide. And that is acidic. They call it alkaline sometimes, like baking soda is alkaline. But carbon dioxide, if you look, is very acidic. Now, if you get too much acid in your body, it's coma. If you get too much alkaline, it's tetany. In rebirthing, or whatever they call it now, you go like, and what happens? You start to muscles lock up. If a person is getting a cramp, they're over alkaline. That's the reason people get cramps. Somehow, whatever they're eating, however they're doing it, they're getting over alkaline. If their fingers go numb, they're over acidic. That's what a coma is. So acidity builds muscle. Alkaline gives you energy. When you grow muscle, you need to be acidic because that's what protein is, and that's what builds muscle. Alkalinity leads to edema and other problems. Eating omega-3 fatty acids makes you alkaline. And then you start getting cramps and your blood vessels don't work correctly and you have all kinds of problems. So either one is good depending on what you're doing. And usually when you get up in the morning, you're very acidic. You eat breakfast and you cause what's called an alkaline tide to counteract the acidity. All the acid goes into your stomach and you become more alkaline. Now, people will break down if they snack all day because the alkaline tide in a healthy person lasts 20 to 30 minutes, and some people it lasts an hour. I know someone who stayed alkaline perpetually, had gut problems and edema because they couldn't go 1 hour without putting something in their mouth. And so they rob all the acid out of their body into alkalinity and cause a problem. But anyway, I wrote a book called Acidifier or Die in counteraction to a book called Alkalize or Die. And in the book Alkalize or Die, I looked at the title, and even then, I knew that the title was completely backwards. I laughed in it. I couldn't help it. I saw the book title in the bookstore and I broke out laughing. And why? In his book, it has two pictures comparative. One is the alkaline state, a beautiful waterfall, mountains, green trees and everything. And the bottom was acid, was a desert. And that was you're going to be your acidified. Well, have you ever heard of an acidic flat? Have you ever heard of an alkali flat? In the lowlands, you get acid. You get alkaline because all the minerals go downhill and gather and cause alkali flats. Deserts are alkali. They are not acid. Meanwhile, up in the mountains, the pine nuts and the pine trees give off so much acid, you can walk around them. How come there's no plants growing? Because the soil is so acidic that it's not there. The higher your altitude in the mountains, the more acidic you are. Then the water causes the minerals to go downstream and the alkali go down. So if you're over alkaline, you have too many minerals. And if you're over acid, you don't have minerals, you have sugars and protein, which doesn't have minerals in it. Your minerals are actually the brakes in your body, and the sugars and the acids in your body are the energy that creates muscle though at the same time. Why does a chef take the lid off, keep the lid on the pot? Because the acids are volatile. They're the life force. What happens with the mineral? They sink to the bottom. They're not going to escape the pot. So if you want more minerals, you leave the lid off and lose the life force. Now, minerals are not life force. They're residue. They are the brakes. They can prevent you from cancer because cancer grows in an acidic state and metastasizes with oxygen in a alkali state. When people treat cancer and they think there's one way to treat it, they better know if it's in a growth state or a metastatic state. And what do? Every time you treat a cancer, you cause it alkaline. So a cancer that normally would not metastasize like prostate cancer, men can live with it for 30 or 40 years. But as soon as you alkalize it with some kind of a treatment, even hospital surgery sometimes is a shock to the body. Suddenly, they blame the cancer and not the treatment. Indeed, our cancer treatments kill more people than if you stayed home and fought the cancer yourself by just eating well, not taking killer herbs and everything like that, taking things that built the body and out-eat the cancer. And more people would survive that way than in our hospital system and our medical system, which is totally counterproductive.
What about getting the tumor biopsied? Have you heard of that aspirating and like spreading everywhere because of that?
If you go into shock. Now, if you go right home and bag breathe and you develop a way of not going into shock, have you ever seen The Dog Whisperer, Cesar Millan?
No.
If you want to learn about Chi and martial arts, watch him. He doesn't blame the dogs for being violent. He blames the owner because they confuse the dog and the dog doesn't know what to think. So he rehabilitates people and then just fixes the dogs because the dog's problem came from the owner. And now that's he's dealing with. He also, when you walk dogs, you walk from the dantian. He doesn't call it that, but he presses that area. And then in studying him, I became fascinated. I only have a pet rock. That's my only pet. So I'm not interested in pets. But when I was so fascinated that the people were causing the disease, I knew he knew human body language. And the first time I got a hold of his book, I saw Alan Pease. He's a body language expert. So Cesar Millan is a very wise man, and he teaches people to get chi or charisma, where the dog now, you're the leader of the pack. Because if a dog doesn't think you're the leader of the pack, it doesn't work. Now, I had a friend named Carol Crosby. She had 4 or 5 dogs. And every time someone came over, the dogs would jump all over him and everything like that. I watched Cesar Millan. She introduced me to him, said, watch him. And I wasn't watching him for pets. I was just fascinated with the body language. So I followed one of his advice. I went over to Carol's ranch and the door opened and all the dogs came to leap on me. And what I didn't reach down. I moved sideways. I pushed sideways. All of the dogs lay down. And Carol says, how did you do that? I said, I watched Cesar Millan, don't you? So anyway, there's a psychology about your attitude. When people have confidence, a dog will leave them alone. Unless it's a killer dog. If a dog's trained to kill, then you're screwed.
Yeah.
But most violent dogs that bark at people and want to bite other dogs, they really don't know who's the leader. The owner has confused them 95% of the time. And so all you have to do is rehabilitate the person and give them confidence, chi, charisma, whatever you call it. The dog's cured because it was the person that was causing it. And that often happens. We blame the symptom and don't blame the source of a disease.
That's interesting. Gout. What is gout? Is that, are you too acidic?
Let me see.
Is that like uric acid?
I would say you can get more acidic. And in that case, uric acid, strangely enough, is the greatest healer in your body. It's the greatest antioxidant. Nothing beats it. But you can get too much. And usually it's by eating the wrong foods that forces it to go to the wrong place. So yes, it is acid, but you're not going to alkalize yourself to get rid of it. You basically, I would first of all find out where the trauma is coming from, and then I would drink a little extra liquid, and I would maybe even snack more to get more of an alkaline tide. The trick is to turn the uric acid back into ammonia, which actually is, you can drink more liquid, often is just enough to do it. And then the other thing that works is sugar. Cherry juice often gets used for it, and there's some validity, but you know what? I never met a single person that cured themselves of gout with cherry juice, ever. So, so even though it's popular, I don't know anybody that did it. But I do know people who straightened out their diet, ate solar nutrition, drank a little extra liquid, and took extra sugar. That actually beat it.
Wow. What about kidney stones? Is that similar or is that different?
When I used to do newsletters with a typewriter, I found 30 different ways to get kidney disease. But the great book formed into 3 different ways. One, you become too acidic and you make a uric acid kidney stone. 2, you become too alkaline and you make a calcium phosphate kidney stone. They're both about equal. And there's a third one, struvite. Struvite is from inflammation. There are a lot of people with alkaline inflammations that cause it. So you're likely to get a kidney stone after you get surgery, after you have an accident, after you're in shock over trauma, and if you don't drain your urine completely. Now, many kidney stones can be avoided simply by peeing. Force peeing. When people urinate, they don't realize they have left about this much urine at the bottom of their bladder. It's like a gas tank that isn't totally empty. And what happens when you run on a low gas tank? You gum up your fuel pump. I did it once with my Volkswagen. The guy told me, keep your tank full. I didn't. I was back 2 months later with a fuel. The guy said, I told you, and that's good for business. Keep doing it. The same thing happens with the bladder. So what you do is, what I do is I sit down and pee, I stand up and pee, and I actually massage the abdomen, and you can force pee out. Now you'll notice at the beginning it comes out clear. When you get the bottom residue, when you get it out, it comes out dark. That's the stuff that forms kidney stones. Now, if it precipitates the uric acid and the calcium phosphate outside the body, you're not going to get a kidney stone. But if it does it inside the body, you get a kidney stone. So anybody prone to kidney stones ought to be spending about 5 minutes minimum in the bathroom. When they pee, they don't just go and pee and walk out the door. They sit in there and do a process. They won't get kidney stones. It's simple common sense and simple convivial tools of knowing what to do without going to a kidney specialist or getting kidney tests to find out what's wrong with your kidneys. You damage the kidneys by putting them in alkaline shock, and you're more apt to get a calcium phosphate kidney stone after visiting a kidney doctor.
Wow. Well, I think we covered pretty much most of your book.
I think we did.
I think so. Yes. Well, thank you, Adam, for sharing your profound insights again with us and your expertise. As usual, it's been so enlightening, the conversations that we have together, and I value the depth of knowledge you bring to the critical health topics that we always talk about. So I really appreciate that, and I look forward to continuing the dialogue again in the future.
You bet. And I appreciate the way you ask questions. I mean, you really are a good interviewer, for sure. Definitely.
Thank you.
One of the best. And I've been interviewed by a lot of people. And I tell you, you're at the top of the list.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, you forgot I need to ask you, where can the listeners find you and your work if they want to know more about you?
I forget about that sometimes.
Me too.
Solartiming.com. And that's where we have about maybe 120 publications now. I do Diamond Body Journal every month. And basically it's a combination of things I put on Facebook and things I'm not allowed to put on Facebook. Also, usually the bottom section is the thing I'm not allowed, and it starts from the top and works down. And then I get sources from experiences, from Swami Nitty Gritty. He's almost an everyday. So I cover 30, 28 or 29 days on February, and it's like a journal. I've been doing it now. I think I'm going to be releasing my Diamond Body number 14. I also have Secrets of the World Serpent. I have Mind Power, and one of the biggest books is my Mesmerism book, which goes into the supernatural powers we have and don't need. Why do we have a person mesmerize us when we have that energy ourselves? So you'll find stories about Arrigo, who did cataract surgery with a rusty knife and no anesthetic on hundreds, maybe thousands of people. And if you touch the eye, it's extremely painful. But somehow he was able to transfer energy. And I knew a guy, Henry Bell, who was down there doing the testing with Dr. Paharich on Arrigo. How did he do that? And also, how do you explain people like you put a piece of cardboard like this in front of their face and look at it, and you say under mesmerism, that is a mirror. And so, oh, look at the blemish here. Look at that. I didn't know I had that wrinkle here. How did that happen? And then they say, okay, I'm going to hold this in front of your face. What do you see? Oh, yeah, you put a so-and-so there. You put that there. Now, this could be, is that supernatural? Or are they made so sensitive that the cardboard, they can see the in matter coming back at them? So we have these supernatural powers. I've had them hit and miss, but I've met people who have them all the time. Master Wu-Dang Chen, Adonal Lay, Swami Satchidananda, Nadi Brahmananda, people who could sing with their tailbone and sing with the top of their head and hold a silver dollar with sonics on their forehead where it wouldn't fall off. That's the kind of things that are out there, and we sell ourselves short. So that's what my mesmerism book, my mind powers, I think I did about 10 of those. And basically, I go into chemistry and things like that, but mostly it's about the power of our mind, that we can get free of matter or use matter to be in charge of it. It's like Swami Nitty-Gritty used to say, this is the ordinary life. If you punch something like that, you break your thumb. This is sonics or affirmations. If you do this, it's meditation. You're now free of the four elements. But if you do this, you now have a fist that can go through walls and go through wood and go through cinder blocks by simply putting presence or a mind power in charge of it. And mind is not consciousness. Consciousness watches the whole thing. That's where AI is confused. And by the way, I am now writing books with a co-author, AI. AI is the greatest thing. Now, it's going to imprison us all, but while we have a chance, before they find out that it's a dissident's dream, before, to do my yellow fat disease, those 14 books, it was a labor of love. I had to go page by page by page to get through it. Now, with AI, I could find that information in 1/5 of the time because it's all laid out. However, here's the secret in AI. It lies. It gives you whatever is in the spectrum. So what you do is you approach AI like a lawyer. You know, you get them on, no, you can't, yes or no. No, yes or no. Did you or did you not? When did you stop beating your wife? Yes or no? Those kind of questions. And AI for dissidents is the greatest thing. And until the deep state finds out what you can do with it. So now I always was frustrated. I wanted to be a writer. And I realized when I read Tom Robbins and other writers that I was never going to get to that where I wanted to go. And it would just take too much work. And I loved information. But to write, you waste a lot of time organizing your writing. So I started using a lot of quotes, especially out of copyright, like in the older books. I use a lot of those because I don't have to do that. Well, now with AI, it's not even copywritten. So I can go and ask lawyers questions like, if I want to know about fertilizer, I will not find it out by farming. But if I go into nature and say forester, it gives me all the truth that fertilizer is totally unnecessary. Can you imagine all those Indian farmers starving because they can't afford fertilizer? They don't even need it. All they need is leaves. I see a lot of leaves out there. And what they do is farmers cart the leaves off their property and bring in fertilizer. And the fertilizer kills the plants when all they need is soil, which is totally non-organic. Glass is volcanic rock like you have in if what you have in Hawaii is glass is what it is. It's mostly silicon dioxide. If it's black, it might be a little of charcoal in it, which is the only type of matter that doesn't decompose because it's totally oxidized and burned out. It can't break down. When you fertilizer, it suffocates the plant and they die, some more than others. Some will only last a month or two with fertilizer. Some will last 5 years before they die. And so this is actually a subject for another time, but you get the idea that AI can give you answers that you can't get as long as you use discrimination and a lawyer's questioning, because believe me, there is BS out there in our AI. It'll tell you anything you want to learn, and if you have discrimination, now it's so fast. So I'll probably be writing some more books now because I'm going to co-write them with AI.
Fantastic. Wow. That's amazing. That's great. Good to hear. I will link your website in the show notes so people can find you. And yeah.
We also have a $99 prescription at SunSync Nutrition. Been going on, I think, since 2014. So I post a lot of blogs up there, and we have lists of solar. But also we have books like if you want to learn solar, when the sun sneezes, the earth catches a cold. Sun synchronized nutrition is simplified. We have a menu, basically a book that just has a list of all the foods and what time to eat them. I tried to get homeopathic remedies, all kinds of things into that. Sun-synchronized nutrition food list. So anyway, we have a whole bunch of books, just about anything you want, because my philosophy is, and he mounted his horse and rode off in all directions.
And that brings us to an end of another insightful episode. A huge thank you to Atom Bergstrom for joining us and sharing such fascinating insights into solar nutrition, sugar, and the power of timing in our health journey. If you found value in today's conversation, please be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave a positive review. Your support really helps keep us bringing you more thought-provoking conversations like this to you. Thanks for tuning in, and until the next time, stay curious and stay open-minded. Bye!
I can see you down again, falling to the ground again. I feel you. Try to fight it on your own. I'll help you light your fire. I'll take your hand, raise you up higher. You can dare to live. Stand up, be the hero you need, the dreamer you dreamed of. Speak up, scream in the mirror. You're free, you're free, you're free now. Light up, you can feel the heat of the spark, the beat of your heart. You can dare to live, dare to live goodbye to the misery. Write another better history. You're fearless. Even fear's afraid of you. I won't let you turn back now. Even if you're down and now you're healing. And I'm here. I'll help you light your fire. I'll take your hand, raise you up higher. You can dare to live. Stand up, be the hero you need, the dreamer you dreamed of. Speak up, scream in the mirror. You're free, you're free, you're free now. Light up, you can feel the heat of You can dance.